Welcome to the Zesty Ginger Podcast. We are Megan and Dr. Alex. We are here for transformation. Yours, ours, and the collective. Personal and professional for practitioners. But not just any transformation. Compassionate transformation. Because between the two of us, we have seemed to have done things the painful way. Let our pitfalls become your stepping stones. We aren't afraid to share our raw and vulnerable truths in order to help you transform your thinking, your body, your heart, and your soul. Combining 15 years of functional medicine with brain-based habit change to lead you to the best life possible in a compassionate way. Compassion, yes, yet plan to roll up your sleeves. Transformation requires your participation. And a quick reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor, not this doctor, before making changes. Now let's get into the episode. Hello. Welcome to the podcast. This is Dr. Alex here with you. I am so glad that you are here. Also, I wanted to thank you all so much for getting in touch with me and leaving comments around this masculine feminine topic. I love the interaction with y'all, so thank you so much. I love to hear what's going on in your world and make all of this super duper applicable and relevant for what's going on in your life. So thank you so much for doing that. I always appreciate when y'all do that, so thank you. Before I kick off this particular podcast episode, I did want to invite you next week. Our Coaches Connect, our free monthly meetup, is part 2 of dealing with difficult clients. So you heard a snippet of that on the podcast from the first call, and hopefully have heard the full first call. That is available. It is for free. You can certainly catch up on that. That would be really good to do before this next upcoming call. We'll put a link in the show notes. But basically, if you work with any humans, now it is about clients. However, you will hear during that call and during this upcoming one just how much this is not any different from anybody else that you deal with. So if there's anybody else in your life that you persuade, that is to say kids, partners, and not only persuade, but influence and interface with and want the best for, the more equipped we are with difficult situations, the more powerfully we can help the world. So that is the goal of those meetups. And the secondary goal also is to all come together as a community of like-minded humans who are really caring about supporting people as they move through transformation and getting the results that they're after. So check that out. The link is going to be in the show notes. And just a reminder, we do that monthly. All right, so we are talking about the feminine today. All right, so we already talked about from the very first episode, masculine and feminine energies are not, they don't have anything to do with gender, and they are not specifically talking about sexuality. These are archetypal energies that all humans carry, and they are ways of describing our inner landscape. Masculine and feminine does not encompass all of who we are. Therefore, there's many aspects of us that we could also talk about. It's just that this particular series is not about those other things, but honing in on these two polarities, right? If these are expression of energies, you can look at them as polarities, and then the interplay of these polarities is then mixed and matched in each individual moment, in each individual scenario, however that person wants to and feels like expressing it, right? So that's the description of masculine and feminine, and that's why it has nothing to do with some of those more concrete things like gender or sexuality. Those certainly they interface with that if someone chooses to. So there's lots of misconceptions, in my opinion, about feminine energies, because people like to take polarities and dualities, and they like to make them black and white, and they like to make clear delineations between them. But if we just refer back to the definition we established on what we're talking about here, there is less distinction between them and more of a flow of natural. You have to be able to explain then everything that fits into masculine and feminine dynamics into those. And so the mix and match really matters. And so there is much less delineation. And when we honor what actually is the truth, which is gray area in the mix and matching, then A, we can avoid a lot of guilt and shame, and two, we can all get into a lot less disagreements, especially on the internet, right? A lot of what I see about masculine and feminine is people fighting about things that are actually incorrect. Because of that, it is worthwhile to chew on dualities and polarities in a more insightful manner, at least in my opinion, right? We can really begin to honor both sides or multiple sides of both the masculine and both the feminine. So you will hear me doing that as I describe the feminine then, because today we're talking about the feminine. Next time we're going to talk about the masculine. But I wanted to start with the feminine because, in my opinion, this is explained in a more skewed format when it's things online. Probably because things online are bite-sized. You know, when you have a 15-second reel, you got to distill something down into something bite-sized and quantifiable, right? And so I think the challenge is topic meets media, and then together that short form undercuts some important details. So a lot of times the feminine is painted as soft, gentle, submissive, flowy, flexible, sweet, nurturing, all of these things. That, in my opinion, is very, very true. All of those aspects of the feminine are, in fact, true and are beautiful expressions, at least in my opinion, of the feminine. Here's what we'll come back to that, though, because first things first, we have to establish that the feminine energies and the masculine energies that we hold, depending on which one someone more strongly is representing at any given time, or maybe they're just dominant in their life. Like for me, I am predominantly feminine in my energies. That energy in and of itself is also very powerful. The masculine and the feminine energies are equally powerful in their own right. So while the feminine does have aspects of softness and gentleness, that in no way then takes away from the power that the feminine has that equally matches the masculine power that the masculine then holds. This is very important because I think that the narrative that the feminine is strictly, the expressed feminine at least, is someone who is always soft and quiet and nurturing, and it almost paints the picture like someone shouldn't be also angry sometimes when someone crosses over your boundaries, or that you don't have to sometimes be loud or forceful or powerful, right? There are plenty of times in life where that is true, and that is key to accomplishing what needs to happen in life. But we can have our power come out when we are in our masculine power, and we can also choose to have our feminine power in play. They are equally powerful, and yet they are just different. This is key because some things in life do require a direct masculine approach, and we'll talk about that next time and what that looks like. But some things require a lot of power, but they require a lot of flexibility and flow and figuring it out and magic and the unknown and figuring things out. And that is where feminine power can come into it, and that is not weak at all. And one of the best things we can point to is childbirth. Now, not every woman, or not every, because it's not gender specific, not every man who identifies into the feminine energy more often will not have that experience, right? So that is totally fine, but we can use that as an expression of powerful feminine energy, and that childbirth is unpredictable, it's unknown, it is creation of life and a lot of destruction at the same time. There are cycles, the contractions come and go, there is squeeze, there's relaxation, there's times to be on, there's times to be off. All of these are beautiful expressions of feminine power. The way that feminine power would move the energy of the world to make something happen, to actually create life. And in that one, we're talking about literally, but we can also talk about sort of metaphorically. The power to create life then, and the act of that and the expression of that power looks different in that. And so childbirth can be a really beautiful example of that. And then I like to take it even further to a metaphor. So feminine energy, my personal favorite way to visualize this is the power of the ocean, right? When we combine the feminine descriptors, where there is a lot of power, and yet there are these components of nurturing and life-giving aspects of creation, of teamwork, of collaboration, of cyclical life form plans, right? Someone eats the plankton get eaten by somebody else, those people get eaten by somebody else, the whales eat or the sharks eat them, the whales eat them. The whole thing just flows, right? And so the ocean is a really beautiful image, in my opinion, of when I go back to feminine power and I ask myself what it looks like in me, I often have the visual of the power of the ocean, right? Because then, along with all the stuff that I just said, with all the life-giving functions, the ocean will also create massive damage. Will it not? When the ocean rages, it is powerful, and in some ways, it can be dangerous. Now, if you've ever seen or you have been in your feminine expression pissed, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and anybody, regardless of gender, can relate to this, right? And so when the ocean rages, there is a lot of energy that can get kicked up to create, and some of it is destructive still, and some of it still helps in creation, the same way, wildfires help bring in and usher in new plant life. In forests, the same thing can happen in the ocean. So these visuals help us understand that the feminine, while she has aspects of flexibility and flow like water does, water is relentless at the heart of it in its pursuit. Let's keep going on these visuals. Then think of a river cutting through rock, right? This is different than a laser cutting through something. A source of water flowing over time will cut it, but it is relentless in its pursuit of flowing into whatever crevices can be found, and over time creating deeper and deeper channels. And that's how we get, things like the Grand Canyon or whatever. And so that is another thing that the feminine expression can be. There can be the full expression of the ocean when we're looking at our feminine energies that expansively. And then we can also say we can direct feminine energies to flow into different situations, to permeate all of our life, to trickle in feminine flow into all of who we are, and to allow ourselves to flow with the rhythm of life, to understand when life is asking us to be more flexible, when it's asking us to recede back or maybe go into a new path, into a new strategy, try a new thing to get feedback. That visual for me is the river, right? Because when the river meets some sort of obstacle, sometimes it just keeps flowing at it anyways until the obstacle disappears, and sometimes it just flows around it and you see a bend in the river and off it goes. I love that because both of these visuals help me feel into my own expression of feminine energy, and especially when I feel the feminine power in me rising. And sometimes that can come from intense emotions, and sometimes that can come because I intend to utilize that energy in my own life in order to accomplish something, right? I'm actually accessing the feminine power that I hold intentionally. So this idea that feminine is weak, I think when we take that apart and we see just how much feminine energies go neck and neck with the masculine in terms of power, then what we begin to do is usher in a lot deeper conversations that accurately represent these two energies. Because quite frankly, when people hear on the internet the masculine is powerful and decision making and feminine is weak and she's submissive and goes along with it, well, gosh, there's a lot of feminine associating people that I know that would be like, no, thank you. Because if you associate with more feminine energies and you don't feel weak, that in no way feels like it relates to you, right? Which is, in my opinion, totally understandable. I don't necessarily feel like I'm like, oh, I'm so gentle and weak all the time, right? So I think that's where it gets us a little bit into trouble. It's not that those things aren't also true about the feminine, because yeah, you look at nature and the way that animals can be nurturing to like unlikely pairings, and the way that nature takes care of itself, and the way that you see some humans going above and beyond for others. There's real nurturing and caring and gentleness too. But at the same time, you'll hear next time, it's not to say that the masculine doesn't have those aspects either, right? The masculine can also be gentle and loving and nurturing and kind. And so we need to make a case for both covering a lot of spectrums in life and be able to bring in a lot of different flavors of energy, but they are just to be used in different ways, because if they feel different, if they garner different results, well, gosh, having multiple options in each category, having different ways of being powerful and having different ways of being gentle is then very, very supportive. And then it allows us to highlight which one gets skewed and which individual energies then make up more masculine and feminine dynamics that are quite honestly more nuanced, right? Because when we talk about things like the feminine being submissive to the masculine, then it is a choice for any given moment for a feminine to submit, right? But when a feminine is healthy in her own power and her own expression, and it is filled out in full, then we can see the feminine does not submit or not choose to submit out of weakness or out of insecurity or out of, you are more powerful than me, therefore I will do this. It's actually a coming together and a choice made from honoring the expression of both energies on any given scenario. It also means that when feminine power is needed, that can come forward and the choice can be made to not submit to masculine or any other energies, right? Maybe not submit to how life is lifing if that's not what you're choosing, right? Sometimes we want to fight something that's happening, and there's nothing wrong with fighting for the results that we want. What's cool about seeing feminine then as water is that when we talk about things like the feminine submitting or being submissive, and we highlight how much it is a choice to flow in certain energies and in certain directions, and to make choices around how we allow life to flow and how we interact with it, submission then becomes, at least as part of the feminine, a very powerful choice. We then are not forced to, and I say we as anyone who identifies more into the feminine energies, or at least at any given time, right? It allows submission to be a powerful choice to come together in connection, love, and unity. And if something is not feeling like that, then the feminine has the power to choose otherwise. Now, when we talk about it like that, doesn't submission then not sound like something that is like, oh, and then you got to just do stuff that sucks, which is so often what I hear on social media, right? There's this argument of, well, gosh, what if I don't want to do what he says I want to do? Or what if I don't want to have my family live like that? Here's the thing, you really don't have to. The ocean is not quiet. The river cutting through stone is not weak, right? We get to say, when we make the choice to say, this is super important to me, the flow will be directed in this direction, let's work this out. As we go through this series, we'll be able to build on all of these concepts, because we'll talk about the feminine influencing the masculine for decisions. Now, this is not only done with the other person or with a other person, but within yourself. How is your own feminine influencing your masculine? And we'll talk about it vice versa. So these negotiations, if you think, oh, I'm not going to do this with other people, it's still present within each individual. So it is really crucial to understand how much each feminine and each masculine gets to make their own choice, because they will ultimately influence each other, and I will argue that they are supposed to, right? If both energies bring in pros and cons to situations, then in things like life doing its thing and things coming up, you want to be able to choose from whatever is happening and choose the most appropriate thing. So, in my opinion, that is why it is set up to be a negotiation, because when you're dealing with the unknown, sometimes you got to get there and then say, what needs to happen now, right? You just don't know until you do that. And so these negotiations within us and others, then we begin to see, if we see both parts of feminine and masculine as equally powerful and bringing things to the table, the influencing of each in both direction becomes a fluid form of seeking connection and love. And that's really what it is, right? So anybody who, if you're listening along and you're like, I've had a problem with the concept of submission from, in these masculine and feminine, that just sounds icky and outdated. And like we're reverting back to the, before women could vote and all that. To me, those are two completely different discussions, right? Is that when we create this definition of submission, to me, that's not applicable to coercion or loss of autonomy or anything like that. It is simply aspects of bringing self-awareness to our world and using that to make choices that feel best to us, right? We will come back time and time again to that topic because, in my opinion, the whole concept of masculine, feminine, and submitting and who's in control and all that is the greatest sticking point that we have in the collective discussion on this right now. So we'll just be bringing that time and time again because that's how it goes. So let's wrap up with finishing up what the feminine does. The Mother Earth is a great example of the creative and cyclical nature of feminine because she reminds us, and the moon is like this too, that things flow and that there's seasons, right? So there are some things in life that are constant. And so there are energies created for that and that they exist within us. And then for the feminine, there are scenarios and situations and things that are cyclical and things that work better being cyclical, kind of like nature, right? Things bloom, and then when they die, they fertilize the soil so that things can bloom. And so it works best cyclical like that. Periods are like that too. And so one of the coolest things, in my opinion, one of the coolest functionalities of the feminine is being able to flow in seasons and knowing what time is for what, right? Sometimes you have to wait, and then it's more of the art of having fun waiting. And then sometimes it's great action and a lot of hustle and a lot of things happening and a lot of whatever, right? And it's time for that. So to me, being able to create and destroy and create and destroy and to use the destruction for creation and to fuel all of that, and it's a never-ending source of power. That to me really highlights how powerful the feminine is. And just how much that when we honor the feminine in each of us, we can then flow through life more easily. So all of these things like stress and burnout and adrenal fatigue and hypothalamic amenorrhea and blunting and hormone problems and all of these things that happen as a result of overworking and all of this stuff, then this kind of discussion can help tremendously because we understand that not everything can be go, 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 and not everything needs to be. And thank goodness that we have both at our disposal, but are we actually using it? Have we brought in as much flexibility and flow as we can to our lives? Most of us, I will say, skew towards no, just because society is not necessarily set up for that. It's schedules, it's 9 to 5s, it's acuity, it's Zoom meetings, it's scheduled things, whatever. And it's still worthwhile considering how much we are bringing this flow and the cyclical truth to it, because if that's where our creative and our power lies in that expression, well, gosh, it kind of behooves us to go seek that out and bring it more into our life so that it can be present. Because at the end of the day, we're creating possibilities, which is what people really want, right? If creative potential merged with the unknown is unlimited possibilities, right? That's kind of the equation. So as we begin to hear how much power the feminine has and how much it is a loving connection and relationship between feminine and masculine, and it is designed to assist us and to uplift us in our life and to get us to possibility and power and choice and vision and to actually get the results that we're after, none of that is weak, right? The feminine is incredibly powerful in her own right. And as we begin to see that in ourselves and seek that, we also then get to look around and say, wow, I am creating the life that I want, that I am able to get the results that I'm after, and I feel so proud of myself for having done that and for showing myself that I can do that. We will continue to build on this next time about what is the masculine and highlighting all the juicy stuff there. And then after we have defined everything, we will be able to go even further down into the series. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for hanging out. Like I said, thank you so much for sending in your DMs and leaving comments and emailing and all of that on these subjects, because I love hearing it. So keep it up. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these podcasts helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.